You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
Hey, my lean and lit lovelies. I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another episode of Get Lean and Lit with Lindy. We are the podcast for women over 40 who want to get strong, get lean, and live a healthy life without starving themselves, living on grass and water, and doing extra hardcore workouts that make you question all of your life choices. We're not doing that around here. We focus on sustainable health strategies and habits, period. No craziness, no extreme actions required. So you guys know I'm always super thrilled to discuss health topics with everyone, but I'm super excited today, especially because we're going to be talking about something that has a huge impact on our health. It's something that nobody really teaches you how to do, though. We're going to be talking about how to actually work with your doctor instead of feeling dismissed, rushed, or confused during your doctor's appointments. Because let's be honest, if you are over 40 and you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to lose fat, you're trying to balance your hormones, and you just want to feel good in your body, you really need better conversations, not more doctor's appointments. So today I'm excited because I have Dr. Bonita Coe here with us today. She's my friend. She's my line sister. She's my homegirl. We're from Cleveland in the house. She's a doctor extraordinaire, and she's the author of a book that's called How to Help Your Doctor Help You. Dr. Coe has written a book that fits perfectly into what we do on this podcast because we're all trying to live longer lives, live stronger lives, and live healthier lives. Now, if you've ever walked out of a doctor's appointment thinking, that wasn't it, or I didn't feel heard, and I also didn't know what to say so I could feel heard, you're not alone. So among other valuable information, Dr. Coe is going to share how to stop being a passive patient and start advocating for yourself without turning into that difficult person. So without further ado, Dr. Coe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lindy, for reaching out and having me as a guest on your show today. I think this is a great topic. This is in my wheelhouse and what I've spent my whole career dealing with. And I'm so glad you mentioned my book because I really wrote my book on this topic so I could reach more people instead of just my patients that I've taken care personally. But it feels kind of weird to have you call me Dr. Coe after all of these years of us knowing each other on different levels. But I think I could stand it for just today for your podcast.
You know what? I give respect where respect is due. I'm always going to put respect on your name. You have worked hard. You've built a fabulous career. All respect comes to you today. So I appreciate you being here today. We're going to go through lots of questions and just kind of have a conversation about something that's super important and healthy for all of us to understand how to do. So if you're down, we're going to just get started. I want to just let the audience know kind of who you are. Give us the Cliff Notes version of your background. Who's Dr. Coe? What are you about?
Like you said, I'm from Cleveland. I am an internal medicine physician in my 29th year, I think, of taking care of patients. And I'll add listening to patients. I went to college at Stanford University, majored in human biology. That's one level we know each other at. And then I went to medical school at the Howard University College of Medicine in Washington, D.C. And then I did my internship and residency back in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic. And over the course of my career, I've taken care of patients in multiple arenas and academic settings, teaching residents and medical students, private practice, group practice, taking care of patients in the hospital and in nursing homes. And so my interest is taking care of the whole person, not just a particular problem. And my strength is really helping people manage life in addition to chronic medical conditions. I'm big on prevention. I do a lot of helping people promote their weight management and sustain healthy eating habits. And so I like the word that you use, sustainable, because a lot of things people do is not sustainable and ultimately is not very useful.
Yes, yes. Amen. Well, that's a very impressive background. That's again why you're getting respect on your name. I love it. Okay, let's get into some of the burning questions that we all want to know. First question I have for you is, a lot of my listeners are women who are over 40. They're juggling careers, children, parents. I mean, they're caught in a whole bunch of different things. And they're trying to take care of themselves. But health often ends up last, unfortunately, for women in those categories. So why is learning how to work with your doctor so important at this stage of life?
It's so interesting that you asked this question because it's actually important to work with your doctor at all stages in life. And in fact, my favorite chapter in my book is called Through the Decades, where I take the reader through each decade of life and detail what health and life issues that they should expect based on my experience of taking care of patients from the age 18 until more seasoned years. And so I felt this chapter is very helpful because it really gives you a looking glass into your future wherever you are, because like you said, especially for women in their 40s, life is happening. You may begin to start managing chronic medical issues. They may not be serious, but medical issues nonetheless. You're managing careers. You may be changing careers, going back to school, child rearing. Then you may have started juggling, taking care of aging parents. And so, like you said, a lot of things are going on in life. And so by being a partner with your doctor, you can actually get more from your doctor, more from your doctor's visits, and actually end up with better health outcomes. So I emphasize this throughout my book because I want people to think of what they're doing with their doctor as a collaboration and not just transactional. And so your doctor is there to not just treat illness, but help you maintain health, preserve health. But the more engaged you are, the better your health can be when you show up and speak up.
Okay. So I'm curious, what made you say, okay, patients need a manual for this and write your book?
I get asked this question a lot, and my honest answer is frustration. Because taking care of patients over many years, I became frustrated because patients come to see me and they don't know the basic things that they should know when they come to a doctor, whether it's a new doctor or returning visits. And so one day I had a patient say to me, as I was telling her the things that I needed her to do, needed her to know, and what she needed to bring to the office, she said, why has no one ever told me these things that you're telling me now? And after I thought about it and I realized none of the stuff is really written down anywhere in one place for people to get that type of information. And so I started my book taking notes, and it became sticky notes, and then it became a document. And I poured into this book all the things that I think a person should know when they come to their doctor, when they're relating with their doctor, so they can be a better steward of their health. Because the more you can help your doctor, the more they can help you. And so that's the premise of the book. Giving people successful strategies. Also, that one patient or multiple patients have given me. The book was my way to chronicle what those strategies are and pass them on to other people so I can help more people with what is successful for other patients. So like knowing what your medicines are, knowing your medical history. A lot of times people don't know their medical history, bringing any labs and records and hospital records and things that have happened to you in between your visits. I always encourage people to take notes. I personally don't mind for people to record me during a visit, because if that helps you, if your family members can participate in your care when you record or write things down. And a big thing, lastly, is knowing your family history. A lot of times family members don't relate their family history because they don't think it's important. But in this day and age, knowing your family history helps your doctor target things that they should be watching out for you. And for cancer screening and cancer prevention, genetic testing is now a part of routine care, and you don't know a person's risk if you don't know their family history. And a lot of times people don't know.
Wow. What's one big misconception patients have about their role when they walk into a doctor's office, from your perspective?
That's a great segue from your last question. And the plain answer is to being a patient requires action instead of just being a passive recipient of care. And so I've listed some of those things that is very important for you to do even before you come to your doctor's office. Healthcare is more effective if you're an active recipient of your participant in your care. And I encourage people, don't think of your doctor's visits as something you do just when something is wrong and just when you're sick. Just like what you do when you go to work, think of them as strategic meetings that you are having with your doctor, planning for your future, being proactive about the care that you want and the care that you want to maintain. And part of that is communicating with your doctor so your doctor understands you as an individual better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's go there for a second, Dr. Coe, because my audience really appreciates honesty, because I keep it 100 on all my podcasts. Whatever I'm talking about, we're not living in fantasy land. We're not being delusional. We're trying to keep it 100% real. So why do some women leave the doctor's office feeling dismissed or rushed? I've heard that a lot. What's your thought?
I think you alluded to that earlier, because I think some people may not even know how to communicate how they feel. And so they haven't had their concerns addressed. They haven't had their fears addressed. And that's why I wrote a whole chapter in my book on how to describe your symptoms and describe how you feel to the doctor, to give people the words to say to describe what they're feeling, to get more out of their visits. The better you can describe a symptom or a pattern of symptoms to your doctor, the better the doctor can figure out the source of the problem. And so I always encourage people to, as I mentioned before, come with a list of concerns, to prioritize with your doctor so you don't feel like the doctor is just standing over you, giving you directives, coming with your concerns and prioritizing them in the way that you feel important, and also the way the doctor feels is important, tackling things that may be more serious first. And that way, when you leave your visit, you feel like you have a plan for addressing the concerns addressed during that visit, a plan to address future concerns in a priority that is satisfactory for you. And then also, you can feel like you've accomplished something at your visit. And then you can also monitor your progress each visit too. So you can feel that things are being addressed, things are being, your concerns are being addressed. And so I think by doing that, you can get more out of your doctor's visits and don't feel you're being dismissed or rushed, keeping in mind that you're comfortable with everything not being solved in one visit.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's another piece of being realistic, I think. You can't, everything, Rome wasn't built in a day. So you can't turn around and look at your doctor and expect to be healed in 30 minutes. Like, that's unrealistic.
Exactly.
So also, I want to be fair on the other side. What are we as patients doing wrong? Like, what are we doing that might actually make things harder or worse for a doctor?
I think as a patient, a lot of times we don't understand what's going on the other side of everything that's going on in the background in the whatever place that you're going for your care. And so I like to start at looking at people as a whole person and not just a bucket of problems. People often are not aware that some health issues feed upon one another. So you have to, it makes it more challenging to do and get to where you need to be when the doctor has to consider what's interacting with what. I also encourage people to have more grace with themselves. Give yourself some grace. Try to be more patient with your care, not to be try not to be so hard on yourself as you're trying to work on your health goals. You probably have heard this before. It's not a good idea to do internet searches about symptoms because 9 times out of 10, you're going to see worst case scenarios. Your level of anxiety is going to be higher than when you started your search, and that can cause more harm than good. I coined, and actually this term is actually in the process of being trademarked, a term I call regretitis. And it's probably will sound familiar as I describe it, but I describe it to people to get to thinking about what they're doing as far as their choices every day. It's a term that occurs when a person becomes trapped in a cycle of ruminating over past decisions that they wish they could reverse. It's a chronic thing. It can be life altering. This is not something that you read about. It doesn't show up on scans or blood tests, but it's a real thing. When people miss opportunities, follow one path in life, then another, don't address things that should be addressed. Sometimes people can become paralyzed with fear about what's going to happen, paralyzed with worrying about what choices they've made in the past. And I call that health inertia, where that person feels stuck with their inside their body, overwhelmed by things that are happening that they can't change. And so they stop taking action, which is the exact opposite of what we're talking about we should be doing, being active in your care. So I spent a lot of time in my book talking about thinking proactively about choices that you make in your life, because a lot of those choices bleed into the doctor's visit. You know, the obvious things about what we eat, how much we sleep, do we do what we're supposed to do for our preventive health, but also managing stress, how we plan in our life, our work, our families. And so I encourage people to think about a different paradigm, making intentional health and life choices to avoid the term that I call regretitis, because it can be very paralyzing and very real for a lot of people.
Wow, that term is no joke. It really is not. It's no joke. personally, I've tried my whole life to avoid getting to the point where I would have that type of feeling. I mean, health is a lifelong journey. And people don't like
Yes.
to hear that, but it doesn't have an end date. You have to continue to do it until you're no longer able to do it, I guess is how you look at it, huh? And I know my podcast listeners, wow, they're going to really absorb that term because that is very serious. Yeah, it's a little scary, but yeah, we have to be proactive and take care of ourselves. That's the bottom line on that. Um, on the flip side, let's talk a little bit more about what are doctors not necessarily getting right, maybe getting wrong when it comes to women, especially women 40 plus, 50, 60, who are kind of, seasoned, like as you used earlier, that term. What's going on with that relationship in terms of, in your opinion, women and their doctors?
In my opinion, working with colleagues and obviously referring patients here and there over the years, I think that many doctors are not as skilled as they need to be in addressing women's health and women's health issues. I think a lot of that probably are deficiencies in how doctors are trained. I think over the years that has gotten better. And the other thing I think is a lot of times, as I mentioned before, from the doctor's perspective, we feel kind of pressure to try and tackle everything in one visit. And so I actually taught myself how to engage the patient, to prioritize things so I don't feel rushed. The patient doesn't feel rushed. I don't feel like I'm leaving something out. The patient feels like their issues are being addressed, because it can be very challenging to deal with multiple issues when you have time constraints and a busy practice. So I think in my career, I have focused, especially as a female doctor, I have made it my priority to be skilled in taking care of women's health issues, and also goal setting with patients during their visits. So I don't feel that I'm missing anything and the patient doesn't either.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, I want to make this part of my questioning, I want it to be super actionable, because that's part of my podcast. Not only do I give information that's scientifically supported, but I teach people how to actually make habits of good things, easy habits that they can actually integrate and they're sustainable in their lives. So if someone only has about 15 minutes with their doctor, how do they not waste that 15 minutes? Like, how do they just whittle it down to just straightforward, let's go, be actionable?
So the first thing I think is very helpful is bringing your list of concerns or new problems or symptoms that you've had in between visits. So you don't forget to tell the doctor things. And so in your mind, before you get to the visit, you can prioritize within yourself how you want to address things and communicate to the doctor. As I mentioned, bring your medicine bottles, outside records, labs, hospital records, anything you've had in between visits. Make sure that you have followed the plan that you and your doctor came up with since the last visit, because if you did not do that, you cannot make progress from visit to visit. And if you didn't follow the plan, be honest with your doctor. Don't say you did when you did it. And also, because that's just garbage in and garbage out. And also, if you're doing home self-monitoring, bring that information and data to your visit. So your blood pressure machine, so the doctor or one of the assistants can check the machine, make sure you're using it properly, make sure it's reading properly. Bring home blood pressure readings. And if you're checking glucose or blood sugars, bring those. Food diaries, any self-monitoring data always helps the doctor get a snapshot and a picture of what is going on in your life health-wise in between your visits. All of that helps in that 15-minute time.
Okay, that's really great advice. Are there any other things you can think of that we can actually do before our appointments before we walk in so that we're feeling 100% prepared and we can get better answers? We need confidence walking in. Is there anything else we can think about before that time?
I encourage what we call journaling. So, writing down how you feel in between visits. It actually is very therapeutic. It helps you feel like you have more control what's going on with your health when you're journaling and writing things down. What you're eating, like I mentioned, food diaries, sleep, and a lot of times you can see patterns in how what you're eating and exercise and sleep is interacting and affecting negatively or positively how you feel every day. And it also allows the doctor to see patterns and what's going on with you. And sometimes things become more obvious when you record them. And as I mentioned, knowing what your medicines are, if you need to write them down, the name of the medicine, what it's for, and keeping track of family history. If anybody gets any new medical issues, tell your doctor, and also keeping track of your medical records, organized in your life. The more organized you are, the more the doctor can be organized taking care of you.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha on that. That makes a lot of sense. My next question is, a lot of women, because we focus on women here. A lot of women are they're at the stage in life where they're trying to lose fat, trying to build muscles, and just feel better and more comfortable in their own skin. But I hear from a lot of women that they feel like they hit a wall. And when they go and talk to their doctor, the doctor says, "Oh, everything looks normal to me." What can they say as a follow-up to that?
Even before that, I like to impress upon people that as far as what you look like in your skin, the fat you have, the muscle that you have, and how you feel is really, really controlled by what you're eating. And that includes how you're preparing your food. I also encourage people to know that weight gain, in particular, when we're talking about weight gain happens in men and women in that middle age, and it can be managed. However, you have to be open to make changes, real changes in how you eat. I encourage people to think of food as nutrition, food as medicine. And I say to people, are you going to eat the good medicine or are you going to eat the bad medicine? Including not being shy about asking for a referral from your doctor for a nutritionist or a dietitian, because then you can focus on making food a part of your life, a useful part of your life, and also know what foods to avoid and how to prepare your food. And I spend a lot of time in my book addressing this. And I actually had a dietitian colleague edit those chapters when I talk about food. And the other thing I always say is you can lose weight and get your body to how you want it to be by eating healthy, but you can't do it by exercise alone. So you can lose weight by changing your food, but you can't do it just by exercise and not paying attention to what you're eating. It doesn't happen the other way around.
Absolutely. We always talk about weight loss is about 90% food and maybe 10% movement, exercise. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And so that means, without getting to all the specifics, if you want a snapshot term, focus on protein and vegetables and drink lots of water.
Yeah.
And then that means getting rid of the bread, rice, pasta, and white potatoes. Get rid of the starches and the sugar. Just simple. That's simple to say, maybe not as easy to do in your everyday life, but that's a whole life paradigm shift for you and your family. What's in your refrigerator? What's in your cupboards?
Yep. Absolutely. That's the hard stuff that people don't want to really look at, that we have to look at. So we try to keep it real. So, okay. How do you advocate for yourself without feeling like you're the problem? child, the bad person, talking to your doctor?
I think this can be a challenge if you're not clear with yourself and specific with yourself about what you are trying to achieve with your health. Um, Trying to get that noise out of your head as far as what somebody else said, what you saw on the internet, what you saw on TV, and be honest with yourself about what's motivating you to feel how you feel and what you're asking if you're asking something from your doctor, because a lot of times if you can get to the root of what's motivating you, it's much better to get to the solutions that you're trying to get to, or redirect what's motivating you to want what you want. You saw something on TV, you want this, or you had this blood test, but if you're not clear about what you want, including testing, which I spent a lot of time in my book about what is appropriate for testing, and not every test, just because it's available, needs to be done for you. And so that is my approach on handling problems, being very clear of the goal that I'm trying to get to with the patient, communicating that with the patient, and approaching it in a logical fashion such that any testing that's being ordered is going to be able to be interpreted. If you're not clear on why you're ordering a test, you're not going to be clear on how to interpret it for the patient. So you have to do things that are logical and things that are measurable so they make sense as you progress on trying to figure something out or manage a particular condition. And I think a lot of people just want a test, but it's more than just a test. It's what it means to you and what the results, the possible results are going to be, and what you're going to do with those results. Because if you're going to order a test, but the results aren't going to change anything that's in your management, then there's no point in ordering the test.
That makes a lot of sense. And clear communication is so important, just in every facet of life, but in particular in what we're talking about today. If you had to give a couple of go-to phrases that women can literally use in the exam room that would instantly improve their conversation and relationship with their doctor, just a couple of go-to phrases, what would they be?
So that's a segue from what we were talking about earlier with honesty and communication. Be honest about what you're concerned about. A lot of times people hold back on that, what they're concerned about, what they're afraid of. If that is one thing you can say to your doctor, I am afraid of this. Don't worry about what the doctor is going to think about what you're afraid of. Because a lot of times what you're afraid of actually is not the issue, but it may be something else. And then also, not just am I okay, but what can I do to stay okay? And so I think that is a big thing that you can tell your doctor, where your doctor can really get an eye into your concerns and your fears, if you have any, about your health.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now I want to move a little bit to talk about some real life situations that I know my listeners are dealing with currently. So the first one is, what should a woman do if she feels like her symptoms are just being brushed off as aging, or that's just your hormones? I hear that a lot from people.
Well, my response to that is, I don't blame anything on hormones until I've investigated all possibilities. I don't say, oh, it's your hormones, it's just your age, it's just menopause. I do not do that, because a lot of times menopause and hormones gets blamed for things that is not involved with. That's the first thing I would say, that first, second, and third. Everything is not because of age, estrogen, and progesterone and hormones. It's just not. And if you don't look, you will miss things. And so that is my approach to that issue. And I think a lot of times when I say that to women, they feel comfortable that I'm going to be thorough in their evaluation. So you can actually do evaluation to evaluate the whole person, whatever the cause may be. But if we end up saying it's, I don't blame anything on age as far as like, oh, it's just age, bye. No, I don't do that. But
That's
if we
good.
decide your issue is hormonally related and not something else, that can be managed and that can be addressed. Maybe we can't eliminate your symptoms, but they can be managed. And also, what goes with that is setting realistic expectations for people. And so we are clear how we're measuring things, how we're monitoring things, so you feel like you're making progress over time.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind sometimes things can be eliminated, but they can be managed, and you can't give up. If you have to try two or different things before you can get to something, you can't just try one thing and say, oh, that didn't work, this doctor doesn't know what they're talking about. Give the doctor a chance. Sometimes you have to try multiple things before you find what's right for you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be medicine. Sometimes it's a lifestyle change. Sometimes it's what you're eating. It's not always a medication that we're trying.
We live in a quick fix society, so everybody's always looking for the next quick thing they can do versus the real thing, changing that nutrition. How about that? Let's start with that, but that's a whole nother thing. I'll talk about that a lot on my show. So I have a question for you in terms of, I'm really interested, as you can tell from my line of questioning, the relationship, because I love my doctor and I feel like we have a very good relationship. I've been to her for 5 years now, and she just knows everything about me, and I know that she'll give me trustworthy advice. But if something feels off, or you don't agree with the doctor in terms of what they're telling you to do or not do, how do you push back respectfully without really burning the relationship up?
So even before you get to that, as I mentioned before, give a treatment plan time to work. And so that means ask your doctor, okay, this is our plan. How long do you think it's going to take to work? A lot of times, I don't think people ask that question. And then you can be more realistic before you're ready to throw in the towel with your doctor. And as I mentioned before, if you're on a treatment plan, journaling how you're feeling, journaling your plan in between visits really helps the doctor have a clearer picture of what's your life like and how you're feeling every day. But having said all that, if you have misgivings about what is happening with your care, it's never a bad idea to get a second opinion from another doctor or switch to a different doctor. Not necessarily that your doctor is doing something wrong, but often you may have to pick another doctor whose style even aligns with yours, or how they deliver information. Sometimes it's just that. Not every patient is for every doctor, and vice versa. So don't stay with a doctor if you're really feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. And for women who are feeling intimidated or rushed in a medical setting, because a lot of people are very uncomfortable, which I didn't realize until people would tell me that they're uncomfortable even going to the doctor's office. How do they walk in with more built up confidence?
In addition to some of the things that I've said earlier, as far as bringing your list of concerns, come in with questions and notes, what I didn't mention, it's always a good idea to bring someone to your visits, whether they're in person or virtual visits, have someone with you. I think that really helps people have more confidence during their visits. There's two people listening to what's going on. Maybe the person that you bring has a different way of understanding or processing information than you, and the doctor may be able to communicate that with the person that you bring, who then can communicate to you. So often bringing someone for support during your visits really helps. But like I said before, coming with a list of issues to prioritize, and being realistic about what can be solved during each visit.
Okay. Bringing someone with you, that's a good one. I like that idea. Okay, looking at the bigger picture, zooming out for a second, let's kind of go at a high level. How does better communication overall with your doctor actually impact your long-term health, especially when it comes to things like metabolism, hormones, chronic issues?
I think in general, when you communicate with your doctor gets to know you as an individual. Um, then your doctor can individualize treatment plans or lifestyle changes that are recommended that fit your needs and your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say, as a physician, I like to meet people where they are instead of having people come to where I am. You have to meet people where they are in their lives, because if you come up with a treatment plan that does not fit that person, it's not going to work. They're not going to be able to do it regardless of what the issue is: metabolism, hormones, whatever the issue is.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Circling back to my focus on women, as I know you have a lot of experience and thoughts on that, but in your opinion, do you feel like women in midlife are being properly supported in the healthcare industry right now? Or are we still falling through the cracks? Because I know people feel like they're falling through the cracks, or is it just kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Well, I think it's both. And you mentioned this before. A lot of times, women, for whatever reason, and I don't want to say just because they're women and supposedly natural nurturers, that's not true for every woman. However, women often put themselves and their needs below everyone else, meaning putting the others' needs above their own. And so I say often to women and patients in general, but women, start to be selfish about your health. And so your health doesn't suffer. So if somebody else's needs have to be put down before you take care of yourself, I say that's okay. Because you can't take care of other people if you're not taking care of yourself. Having said all that, obviously there is a lot of work that we need to do in this country about improving maternal health. It's not where it should be, compared to other places in the world. And so another reason why I wrote my book is to empower people to take more ownership in their health so they can have better outcomes despite the inefficiencies, inequalities, inconsistencies in our overall healthcare system. And so that includes self-care at home. If you're supposed to be checking your blood pressure, check your blood pressure. If you're supposed to be checking your blood sugar, do the things that you need to do for yourself. Be knowledgeable about the conditions that you have yourself. Like I told a patient today, I was asking her about the surgeries that she had, and she actually said the name of her surgery, a complicated word to say, but it just rolled off her tongue. And I congratulated her. I said, you don't have to be a doctor for everybody. You don't have to know everything about health and medicine, but you do need to know what's going on with you. So know what you had, know how to say it, know what it means. And that doesn't mean you have to be up all night trying to be a doctor, but you should know what's going on with yourself. And a lot of times women do not do that.
Yes, 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 yes. Oh, that's a good one. Congratulations to your patient on that one. That's good. Well, this has been so good. I want to just end our discussion with kind of a rapid fire round of questions for you, to keep you on your toes and see what you have to say about these. But let me see. First question. What's one thing you wish every woman over 40 would stop doing when it comes to her healthcare?
I just said it. Stop taking care of everybody else over yourself.
There you
Period,
go.
as you say.
Period. Period with a T on the end. What's one thing they should start doing?
What we discussed before that most people don't do, take a notebook with you. to your
Okay.
doctor's office. I think writing versus typing on your phone is less distracting during a visit.
Yeah.
Having a notebook and writing things down. And also, I'm not going to say I'm old school. I'm not old, but writing
Traditional.
when you write things down, things are processed differently in the brain than if you're typing on a device. So I always encourage notes and coming with a list of concerns so you can track your concerns over time.
Okay, that makes good sense. So, what's something that might surprise people about how doctors actually think?
Well, I kind of alluded to this previously about testing and ordering labs. That's just not the only thing that we do. Sometimes you have to treat the patient and not just a lab value. For example, thyroid disease, ordering thyroid hormones. Sometimes the lab range of the value may be normal, but the patient still doesn't feel right. And that doesn't mean that something doesn't need to be done just because that lab value is normal. And so treating the patient and not just numbers or what you see on a picture, just because you see something on a scan or an x-ray doesn't mean that something needs to be done. And if you're having a symptom, just because you see something on the scan, that doesn't mean that's the cause of your symptom. The other thing is, I say a lot, is just because two things happen at the same time does not mean that they're related. And so you can go down the wrong road making assumptions about two things or two symptoms that happen in close proximity to one another. You could be looking for one thing instead of another. Sometimes things happen at the same time and they have nothing to do with each other. So you have to be very careful about attributing causation when you're thinking about a problem, and make sure you're looking at alternatives and not jumping to conclusions. And I think people really don't think of their body and things that they experience in that way.
Yeah. In other words, we need to leave Dr. Google alone and ask the real doctor what's going on. Okay, my last question for you, Dr. Coe, is if your entire message had to be summed up in one blunt sentence, what would it be?
You got to change your food.
Okay. Boom. There you go. I love it. I agree with you 100%. You cannot out exercise a bad diet. I don't care how on the treadmill, it's not gonna work. Right?
Got to change your food and be consistent with it and make food part of your life, part of your daily schedule. What I say when I'm helping people lose weight, plan your meals, meal prep. If you're winging it every day with your food, it's not going to work. You have to put food and what you're going to eat into your life every day. I tell people, when you get up every morning, you should know what you're going to eat and when.
Yeah, amen. Amen and amen again. That was such a good conversation. Honestly, that you're very inspirational. I appreciate you coming on to my show. Because really, at the end of the day, taking care of your health is not just about working out. It's not necessarily just about nutrition. It's about how you show up for yourself consistently, right?
Exactly.
And how you partner with your doctor. So thank you so much for coming on my show today, Dr. Coe. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, lovelies, if this episode hit close to home for you guys, definitely share it with a friend who's ever said, my doctor just doesn't listen. Because this episode gives you the tools to do better and to be better as it relates to being proactive about your own health. So until we meet again, keep it real, keep it consistent, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
I just earned a $600 bonus with an Old National Bank checking account.
You got this.
I do?
Earn up to a $600 bonus when you open an eligible checking account and complete qualifying activities. Old National Bank. Just another reason to get old.
Can you say bonus?
It's Shaletta Brundage, Minnesota's autism mom. I need you to help me help stop Medicaid fraud. If your child needs autism services, choose a provider carefully. Legitimate providers won't pressure you to sign up, offer you gift cards, or contact you unexpectedly for personal information. Instead, a good provider will develop an individualized plan for your child and communicate with you regularly. If your child receives autism services, make sure the services are actually provided. Watch your mail for those explanation of benefits letters, right? They show you the services billed under your child's name. Look that thing over. Did your child get all of the services on the dates listed? Now listen, if you have concerns, trust your instincts and report suspected fraud to the Minnesota Department of Human Services at mn.gov/DHS/report-fraud. Or you can always give them a call at 1-800-657-3750.
When she walked in on her first day at Doherty Family College at the University of St. Thomas, she didn't know a soul.
I'm Zion, and I'm a second year at DFC.
A year later, and so many changes for Zion.
I love my friends here. I couldn't do anything without them. We support each other all the time.
At Doherty Family College, Zion also finds support on the academic side. Like all DFC students, Zion can count on a team committed to her success. Doherty Family College is Minnesota's affordable private college option. DFC students earn their associate's degree and then can transition to a 4-year college or university for their bachelor's. Many are students of color or first in their family to go to college.
It's nice to see people that look like you pursuing an education, wanting to succeed academically.
Zion encourages any high school student looking for a college home to do what she did and apply to Doherty Family College.
All the support you could need is here.
Ready to make your move and experience Doherty Family College for yourself? Then schedule your visit to the Minneapolis campus at dfc.stthomas.edu/visit.